I painted the Boston Fire Museum using everything I learned from the 4-Point Channel's painting series. The museum building is a landmark building in the 4-Point neighborhood in Boston. I was drawn to the simple but ornate facade and the activity inside the garage doors on the street. My biggest challenge for this piece was figuring out how to paint the garage interior. None of my reference photos show this area clearly, so I will need to invent it. I start by painting a warm underpainting. As usual, the first wash dries much lighter than when I first apply it. Next, I lay in the main building shadow on the left side of the painting. I didn't use masking fluid on this side of the paper, so I'm careful to not paint over the highlights of the car. Secondary shadows on the building facade and color masking for the supporting building on the right go in next. At this point, I'm painting everything except for the inside of the garage, delaying the real challenge. The only way the garage will work is if the contrast between the facade and the building interior is correct. Correct, in this case, isn't for the image to look like the photo reference. Initially that was the goal, but after a few studies I realized the image lacked an impactful focal point. I paint the museum sign and the stone around the garage next to give myself a reference point for how much saturation and contrast I can paint inside the building. I'm careful to keep the stone lighter than I think it will need to be. My first dabs of paint in the garage are timid, but I snap out of it quickly and paint a strong orange line where the wall meets the ceiling. I transition into yellow as I work a gradient down to the floor. Once the first gradient is in, I let it sit while I work on other parts of the painting. This gives it time to dry, plus it allows me to think about the next steps. When I come back to it, I've already decided that I'll paint the toy truck, the people standing inside, and hints of items hanging on the wall. Once I'm satisfied with the garage and can see how it relates to the larger painting, I move on. I decide the main shadow needs to be darker and more saturated. I add detail to the main facade and add more color where needed. The fire truck in the foreground is part of the focal area, but isn't the focal point itself. Even though it's the most saturated color area in the painting, there isn't a lot of contrast or detail. The edges of the truck blend into its surroundings. A few more details go in on the truck, and the painting is mostly complete. I add final details like the flagpole and street signs before calling it done. I'm Lonnie Ash, and you can find more about my painting on lonnieash.com.